All right.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Steve Van Samson,
Curtis M. Lawson,
Paul Christian Glenn, Joshua Rex, Raz, Rob Smales. Hey, happy Sunday, everybody. Thank Cthulhu, it is Sunday. Welcome to another episode of The Clutch of Personalities. Tonight, hey, Tom Dog, we have with us Morgan Sylvia. I'm so excited about this because, okay, Morgan Sylvia, we're going to give the introduction here. She is a metalhead, an Aquarius, a coffee addict, and a work in progress. A former obituarist. I really want to get into that because that sounds like so much fun. She is now a full-time freelance writer, the author of 2 novels, Abode, which scared the shit out of me, and was recommended by the Library Journal, and Dawn, Book 1 of the Aris Trilogy, 2 novellas, 4 poetry collections. She's been published in dozens of places, including Pseudopod, Wicked Witches, Northern Frights, Haunted House Short Stories, Endless Apocalypse, Under Her Skin, In the Cold, Cold Ground, and The Final Summons. Her second poetry collection, As the Seas Turn Red, was nominated for an Elgin Award twice, and she was one of the writers for the award-winning audio drama Undertow Blood Forest, as well as its follow-up, Undertow the Pulse. Her latest release, which we're going to be talking about, is The Withering Hours, a short story collection, and that's coming out through Weird House Press. She belongs to several writers groups, the Horror Writers Association, the Science Fiction Writers Association, the New England Horror Writers of Maine, and Tuesday Mayhem Society. She lives in Maine with her 2 tuxedo cats, 2 evil goldfish, the cutest rescue dog ever, an overgrown rose garden, and a pet banshee. And we're going to ask also about some upcoming works, including The Blood Gold Queen, Book 2 of the Aris Trilogy, and The Still Folk, a graphic novel collaboration with the artist Ogmios. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay. So, hello, Cindy.
Hey, Cindy.
So let's dive into this. You've got so much stuff going on that, and so much stuff that you're a member of more associations than I can count. And you are one of the only authors I've ever read that's literally scared me. Oh, guys, seriously. Okay, so this book, Abode, I'm always like, I'm gonna find a novel if I can read it, get it. Got this. I could not put it down because I could not wait until I had to keep reading until the sun came up, and then it was like, okay, now I can finish this and I can actually go to bed, because the tension in this novel, it's an epistolary written in emails from somebody, and you have kind of an unreliable narrator going into what is a cross between hauntings and supernatural beings, and I love haunted house stuff, and that's just my vibe. And there's this great house involved in it, and through the whole thing, it's somebody writing to somebody else and just building and building and building and building, and it- just amazing. And if it's okay if we can start on that one,
Yeah.
um, what got you into that one? What was your drive? And like you put so many things in it that, I mean, it one of the things that helped with the making making it connect is there, like there were shadow people involved and stuff like that, and that's something that a lot of people can connect to. And kind of some things where in this case it wasn't so much, but like sleep paralysis is something where a lot of people will see some of these similar figures that are mentioned in here, but people have gone through some of these similar experiences in life. They'll be able to relate to little bits and pieces out of here. So it just draws them in a little bit, or at least for me anyway. It's just like, okay, oh, I recognize something like that. I felt that before. So it just keeps the reader just sicked into it.
I think you hit on something there, because I do think that like truth is always scarier than fiction. And I say truth with, I guess, a grain of salt, because there are, I'm sure, people that don't believe in any of this. But like I love watching like paranormal documentaries, and just like the things that I find really scary are the things that end up in my work. So as far as what went into it, I was still living in Florida when I started it, and I wanted to and still want to tackle like all of the main horror tropes. Like Abode is my haunted house story. It's also my I guess this might be a little bit of a spoiler, but it's also my Wendigo story. And I have things for like, vampires and werewolves, and like, I want to tackle all of the main tropes. And that was like my first take on it. A couple things fell into play. Like I was in Florida and I was really homesick. I was missing winters and all of that. So like there's a seasonal build with Abode. I always tell people, like, if you can, start it in fall and read it through winter. It's definitely not really a summer read, or I mean, I guess you can read it whenever you want, but to me, there's that seasonal element to it. Yeah, there were just a lot of bits and pieces, things that scared me, things that whether they were like urban legends or bits and pieces of things that I had experienced or seen. Some of the things from my childhood ended up in there. Like I remember the storm of, I believe it was 77 or 78, this huge storm. I lived through that in Maine, and there's a picture of me. We had this huge tree in our yard, and like the snowbanks were so tall that I was like standing on one, and I was like touching this tree limb, and it was a really tall tree limb. Like I should not have been anywhere near it. So just little things like that. Like my mind is sort of a weird blender in that I take all these influences and spit them out. But if I'm writing something scary, I want to scare myself and I want to scare my readers. And I love hearing that Abode scared people, because it actually honestly scared me when I was writing it. There was just like little weird things that would happen. Like I remember I was writing it, and there's a part where there's like scratching in the walls, and we had like mice. So I'm hearing scratching in the walls, and I'm writing about scratching in the walls. And I know it's a mouse, but it was still like, the hell's going on here? It was still pretty freaky.
Yeah, I'm used to weird noises around here. I'm in an apartment, but sometimes there's things in the apartment too. And like my mom lives in a haunted house, so we're just kind of used to like, oh, something will just get knocked over, or you know,
Yeah.
those kind of things going on. And I liked how you had that in the story too, where although it was a bit more extreme in some cases, like we've had things that have gone flying through the air and stuff before over there, and at some of the other family members' houses too. We have one that just kind of wherever she goes, something shows up, and it'll remain there after she leaves too. I was going to start a like business where it's like every time you move, just let people know and I'll come in and I'll like bless their house for them and stuff. Try to get rid of
Right.
the residue because it gets weird, like voices and you know, seriously, like the flying objects and stuff is the weirdest stuff. But the people who are living in this story, and it's something that you notice a lot in haunted house stories, is you just start to get used to it. You know,
Yeah.
you, if you're stuck there, you can't make a big deal out of it because, in most cases, the reason people don't leave haunted houses right away is because that's the only place they have left. Their money is
Right.
sunk. There's nowhere to go. So when you're hearing the scratching, you pretend it's something else. When something falls, oh, that was, some sort of the wind did it. The invisible cat did it or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, uh, it was just so very relatable, I think, is what really brought it on. And then the narrator who's coming through and just telling it all, um, there was a lot of stuff there where it's like, I'm an alcoholic. I've been a drug addict. I've been admitted to mental institutions and stuff. But all of these things are because of what happened to, I don't want to really spoil too much of it, um, but was the intention there to make it so you're like, is this person completely crazy and just thinks all these things happened? Or is it to give us a little bit of doubt on how much was real and how much was not? Or what what were you going with for, because I loved
Um,
it.
I'm much more of a pantser than plotter, so it wasn't really as much thought out as that's just like who the character voice, how it came through. And the deeper that I delved into it, like I just wanted to look at it from a different lens, um, than what most haunted house stories are. Like in this case, I don't think I had heard the term unreliable narrator, but I've definitely heard it a lot in the time that Abode's come out, because that kind of almost could be like a storybook definition of an unreliable narrator. Is this guy like he's pretty much batshit? Um, I think yeah, it was really instinctive, but it felt like it was working for that voice, because there are parts where he just kind of like goes off the rails, but I think there was somewhere in him is still that little hurt little kid, and you can sort of see that surface here and there, like the pain of it. So I guess there was something about like, also touching on the trauma that happened with this family and that emotional pain and the scars that that left behind. So there's like a lot of, I think, question marks and things that come into real people, because I think like with reality, like we're all scarred beasts. We all have, some sort of baggage. And hopefully none of you have that sort of baggage that that character has. But I think that's something about, just the human element to it. But I mean, yeah, like I said, it really wasn't as much thought out. I'm very instinctive. And like just when I'm going, it's just like, okay, this is working. And I just, whenever I went back in, like that was just his kind of voice developed. And I never named that character. He still does not have a name. Um, and now it's like, I remember like when it was about to come up, I was like, should I name him? And I'm just like, no, he's like every man. He could be anyone like walking past. So yeah, there was that element of it too.
That was something else. The secondary main character, I guess, the audience that he's addressing, their name doesn't get brought up for quite a while in the book.
Right.
So I love that. He's very descriptive, but the name doesn't come out until it absolutely really has to. And I I think, was it a this is going to sound strange, but I think it was a Hemingway short story where it was like there was a woman who was described, and the only thing that was described about her was like the dress she was wearing or the hat. It was
Mhm.
like a yellow dress or a yellow hat. And so it leaves it all up to imagination as far as like how the reader interprets it. And I really enjoy doing that myself with characters if they don't need to be described, so that everybody has their own different view of
Yeah,
what they are. It
I
it
do
just
that quite a bit.
I think it helps the readers like invest themselves into the story more because it's up to them to put a face to it and
Yeah,
put all the sounds. You don't know if this character what race they are, and in some cases you might not know what gender they are, or that's a whole ball of wax at this point, but different ball. Sorry. My alcoholic support squirrel is like giving me vibes of like, oh, you don't want to touch that. No, don't. Okay. But so moving on to some of the other stuff you've written a lot of poetry, and I didn't get into looking at too much of the poetry, but you also write a lot of shorts, and I love writing shorts. I Novels for me are so hard because I have to get in that ongoing super flow. But what is your favorite uh thing to write? Is it the poetry, or is it just whatever grabs you at the time?
They're all a little bit different. They all kind of hit different things. I sort of went backwards as a writer. Like, I guess I started on poetry. I thought they were song lyrics, but I have like folders full of like, my little childhood, thought I was writing song lyrics, and then I eventually realized that I'm not in a band, I'm not a singer, they're actually poems. They all kind of fill different things. Like, the poems are where I like to go really hard with like language and visualizations and things that are almost surreal. They don't have to make sense. To me, it's got to have like a language to the rhythm and a visual aspect to it. And that sort of does bleed into my longer works. I actually, moving on from poetry, the first things I wrote were an epic fantasy series, which hasn't been released yet. Like, that I'm still working on, but it's up to like, I think 6 books.
Oh, wow.
And that was really, really long. And then I got tired of working on it. And I was like, I'm going to write a standalone novel. Well, that turned into Dawn. My standalone novel, I started by brainstorming a chapter, which ended up being the final chapter of what ended up being 3 books that I had to write to get to the chapter. And ironically, now that like I'm finishing up the series, it's come out through Crossroads. The second one's coming out. That scene that sparked the whole thing may not even work anymore. So I don't even know what to do with that. But shorts, I started writing shorts mostly just to get something out. And I didn't think I would like the form. I'm more of a novel reader than a short story reader, or I was. But now I really appreciate the fact that, like, hey, I can show a little snippet of a world. I can show the story and not have to put years of my life into it. I can be done in weeks or a couple of months, depending on what it is. So yeah, they all have their strengths and weaknesses. I'm starting to, I think I would actually have to say novellas, kind of the sweet spot between the short stories and the novels, because like you have enough room to like play with the story and really dive in, but you're not committed to that word count length with novels, which can be tricky because like, you can overshoot it and then it's too big of a book. But if you don't want it to be bloated and slow. So there's a lot of like pacing elements that come into play, I feel like, with novels. Whereas novellas and shorts, they just have to be a little bit more fast moving. So I don't find that I have that issue writing novellas. So yeah, I guess I would have to go with novellas, but they all have their own things. And I really like the audio. I've done some audio drama work. I've done audio scripts too, and I really like that format as well. There's something about hearing a story, taking the visual elements out of it and having to picture it, that I think like really adds a whole other layer of atmosphere and terror, especially if the sound design is right. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a literary, I'll write whatever. I'll write anything. Except
That's
plays.
good.
I don't do plays.
Well, and you're going to be working on a graphic novel as well.
Yep.
So
Actually, it's a series of graphic novels. We started out with a graphic novel, and the world has gotten legs. It's kind of growing and growing. It's called The Still Folk. It is a dark fairy tale. Because we don't have any official, like, anything official to announce, I will just say that we are really excited about it, and it's just got that vibe where it's like it's alive and it's moving, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. So
I've
and there are
tried
definitely
to
squirrels involved, so there's that too. Drunken squirrels even.
drunk. Oh,
Yep.
Radifosker, your family's there. I I've tried to write. I There are a couple of like comics that I want to write, things that I've like started writing as a story where I'm like, since I'm so into comics, I'm like, this would actually work so much better with a lot more art behind it, to kind of
Mhm.
show more than that. And the the script writing process for me is just so hard trying to figure out, like, okay, we're going to set it up into these panels. This is everything that's going to go on, and then breaking it all up? Do you break it up in thumbnail and stuff for your artist, or?
We have talked about it. We're actually not there yet. We're still kind of hashing out some of the main storyline aspects. But I am doing the writing bit, and Og is doing the graphic stuff, so that would be him on how he wants to do it. I think we are doing a little bit of that. It's not going to be your typical graphic novel in that, like, we're going to play with the formatting a little bit. There may be like poetic sections and things like that where it's more like almost like artsy looking. But yeah, I guess I'll hopefully be able to come back on when it's out and tell you more details.
Oh yeah, I would love that. And what I was reading earlier today is the Withering Hours, which, oh my gosh, this was so good. All the shorts, and you hit on so many different folk tales and different supernatural. I loved how you hit the Strigoi. That was one of my favorites out of there. And did you are once again, these are all things that you were like really into? Did you do a lot of research onto stuff, or was it?
Some of them, yeah, like I mean, about I'd say I think 5 of the stories are new and the others were previously published. But I do remember I usually will do research even for short stories. One that's in there, To Dance the Witches Circle, that was in the New England Horror Writers Anthology for Wicked Witches. I did quite a bit of research on that one. That one tied into the Scottish witch trials, which is like my writer brain is absolutely fascinated with that era. Like we hear a lot about Salem. We don't hear that much about what happened in Scotland, which is like fascinating to me. But yeah, I did some pretty heavy research for that one. So a little bit, I guess a little bit more, some more than others, but yeah, there's usually some research that goes into them. The werewolf one, I did a lot of research on that. That was called Silverheart. And then there are some that are a little bit more like tongue-in-cheek. Trying to think different ones. Like the Strigoi one, yeah. Actually, that one, there was quite a bit of research on that one too, the New England vampires. So yeah, depending on if the story calls for it or not. Sometimes they don't as much as others. But even on a short, like I do research. I feel like yeah, I'll spend days researching for something that's just going to be a short story. I don't care. Like if it brings if it brings that level of reality and authority to it, then I feel it's time well spent.
They feel so true when I'm reading them. Like it's not like I'm just I read a lot, and I've read a lot of different people's like fairy tales and dark fairy tales and such, and seen some common elements that you've put into their used, but yours feel like it's coming from a perspective of like just reality, just in like, oh yeah, I knew this is, life going on, this is how it works, and it doesn't feel like forced or anything. It's not like somebody's trying to convince me that this is real. It's just, this is already real. I'm just letting you know what happened in my little segment of it, that I was a part of. So I just
I think that would come down into like just putting myself into the character. Obviously a lot of my stories they're not like happy stories. There's a lot of scary, dark stuff going on. So just what would that feel like? That's the kind of thing that I do try to infuse when I can.
comes across very well. It's
Thank you.
You guys, you have to go out and get some copies of her work because they are brilliant. And with this one, The Withering Hours, that is up. Is it pre-order right now, or is it actually up for order at Weird House?
Right now there is a limited edition hardcover. It's a limited signed deluxe lettered hardcover with slipcase. I feel like I have to memorize that to say it properly. There were, I believe, 25 copies of that, and we're down to. I reposted it the other day, and it was down to 4. That's just the deluxe edition. There are other editions like the trade paperback that will be up for pre-order soon-ish. I don't have an exact date, but I think it's getting pretty close as far as I know.
Okay. Yeah, I do a lot of ordering through Weird House. I always get super excited when I get one of those boxes because you know you're getting a treasure when you
Yeah.
everything is so beautifully done and just well put together. But other thing I was going to ask you about was with your characters, and you said you put a lot of yourself in them. Um, are you somebody that you create the characters and control them, or do the characters, once they get created, take on their own life and start telling you, no, 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 this is the way it's going to go, actually? And you messed up here. I wouldn't actually do that. I would do this instead.
I would say I'm more in the latter. It's more instinctive. I can sort of tell like when I've locked in on something because that character just suddenly feels much more real to me. But on the other hand, like there are some books like the one of the ones in the Withering Hours, Valley of Shadows. I know nothing about that main character. Like they're just a lens from where they're viewing the world. Like there's very little like personal information about them in there. But that was the purpose for that character. And that was written in second person, which was also like a little bit weird. Um, so it does vary a bit with the work, I guess. But I am more instinctive. It's almost like they appear, I guess, more than I create them. And it's weird saying that because I know writers get it, but it probably sounds very like woo woo. But yeah, I kind of sense my way through it. I can tell when something's becoming real, I guess, or when they're taking on that energy of their own.
Yeah, I get told off. That's one of the reasons why none of my novels have been finished yet, is because I'll get going on something and it's like, no, that's not really the plot. No. No, you created me and you named me, and now that I have a name, I exist, and I am not going to do what you just told me to do because I absolutely would not. So let's research this whole thing, and maybe that character doesn't need to be here yet because you haven't made them as much as you've made me, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I mean, I think there's, like no matter how much studying or training or writing you do, there is always going to be that element of that energy to it, the unknown. And I think that's good. That means that you're tapping into some creative vein, and you're on some level telling like what's working and what's not. And I don't think I'm the first writer that would say like when that happens, it can take you to some pretty unexpected places over the course of a story. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's, usually when the best work comes out.
I I have a story about that kind of. I do editing as well, and I was working on a book with somebody, and I'm not going to give away who it was or whatever, but he had this. It was like a offshoot world that he had a bunch of different worlds that tied together. But in this one, there was a guy who was brand new in this part of the world, and somebody had rescued him from the streets and wanted to have him pay her back by getting a certain artifact from this scribes guild. And he was filthy. He'd come down and he had nowhere to live. He'd been living on the streets. And she's like, well, if you go in and retrieve this for me, you just go in, you can read and write, they'll let you into the scribes guild, um, and get this for me. Then, we'll figure out how you sneak out. I know the layout of the place or whatever. Um, then I'll set you up and everything will be great. And so he writes this and they go up and he's like let in. And I was like, I think that, I mean, if she's going to try to get him in to do this, if he's going to be joining this guild, wouldn't she want to, like give him new clothes and maybe clean him up a little bit before he went to try to get into the guild? Because, I mean, are they just letting beggars off the street into this, auspicious place? And he's like, oh, good point. And he comes back and sends back to me. He's like, this is actually what I came up with. And instead of doing that, they still take people off the street no matter what they are. But they, once you join, they gave them lobotomies. He changed, like, instead of giving him a shower, he gave all of the scribes of this certain level lobotomies so that they could function enough to basically copy and rewrite things. But then they just stayed in their cells and were kind of all drab and gave him a reason why they would accept any beggar who could write. I was just like, shower, lobotomy, okay, you
Okay.
know, if that's what called out as truth to you, then
Hopefully there's no CEOs listening to this being like,
but yeah, sometimes what one person thinks, is completely different than what another person thinks. But it was just like there had to be something tweaked there just a little bit. And I was like, he's a fabulous writer though, and it did work out very well. It was just kind of a, where in the hell did you get that out of me suggesting a shower?
Well, did you see Session 9?
That's one of my favorite movies ever.
Mine
Yes.
too. But like when you said that, I was like, well, it wouldn't really cost a lot. You just need that one thing and a hammer. So profitability wise, it kind of makes sense.
Okay, so I live alone. This is right near me. I have a couch machete right there that I can reach under my sofa cushion. There's a machete, but yeah, we have the ice
You
pick.
have it.
Yeah.
You lobotomize your squirrel.
No, it's for when people come to the door. I have the chain up, and you can just like, nobody expects a front orbital lobotomy if they're
right.
I mean, it can also work for puncture wounds in the throat or something too. You're like, ooh, insta-tracheotomy. But my little lobotomy tool, just what you do, what you have. So,
I didn't have one of those, so I'd be stuck with like a pen or something.
My mother, when we were little, she was a nurse, and she would carry around in her purse, like, I think it's a 9 or 10 gauge needle or something like that, that whatever they use to give a trach, just in case one of us would have some allergic reaction or start choking on something. She was just like always prepared. We're like, I mean, that's cool. Weird if you go through an airport. I suppose these days they probably don't let you do that anymore, but
Guess it's better to have it not need it than need it.
Like our age group growing up, it's like we're watching MacGyver, and it's like I think everybody who's our age knows that, like, okay, if you have a pocket knife and a Bic pen, you can just like you poke right there, you pull out the Bic pen, just shove it through, and they can breathe.
Yeah.
That never happened.
Get the duct tape.
Yeah, that never happened. I never had to stop, drop, and roll. I've never encountered quicksand.
I was just gonna say I've never hit quicksand. Like when I was little, I was terrified of quicksand, and I've never. Hopefully I'm okay with that. Like I don't want to run into quicksand, but yeah, I did think it was going to be a bigger problem than it turned out to be.
Yeah, they scared us in childhood with all of these things about nature, so you can't really control them. But it's like I don't even know where you would find quicksand at this point. Like, like apparently in a jungle, and I just assumed I was going to be in jungles often or something, or that
Coastal areas, I think, like there's that tidal like quicksand. There was someone in Alaska, I think it was Alaska, and I want to say it wasn't too long ago. And I guess this will fulfill the graphic violence part of the disclaimer.
okay.
I think someone got stuck and they tried to pull him out, and like he literally got ripped in half or something.
Wow, that they didn't prepare us for that in school at all.
Yeah, I know.
I didn't know that.
But I do know that you're supposed to like try and float, like you're supposed to try to like get yourself like to where you're kind of laying on it and then try to like swim out, kind of. I think
that's what I remember, and have somebody with a vine, that.
Yeah, ideally.
we
or a dog that'll throw you a rope.
We have more problems with ice around here because I'm in Nebraska, but that
I'm in Maine.
Yeah, people are like, oh, we're gonna go out on the lake, and it's like it was 60 degrees yesterday. I don't think you want to go out on the lake anymore.
Yeah, that happened. There was a lot of that. I think it was last year, where it just really didn't get cold. And like around here, they have a lot of like smelt shacks and ice fishing, and I mean they would do like car races on some of our lakes in the winter. But I remember last year, like, because we're kind of surrounded by lakes, and I remember there's this one where people usually ice fish, but like they were out there ice fishing, and you could see like these really big dark spots. I'm like, ugh. But I guess they were close enough to where like they probably could have just walked back to shore if they fell through. I don't know.
Yeah, we had one recently. I think like in the last week or two, we had some, well, back when it was still frozen, which wasn't too long ago. Somebody was trying to ice fish after it had been a warm day, and it was like, are you stupid? I mean, A, it's Nebraska. You're at a lake in town. I'm in Lincoln, and it's like, is it really worth fishing there? You could go fish like on I don't know, like one of the creeks or at a river. I guess that's, I don't know if there are a lot of rivers in Maine, but what?
We have our share.
Okay. I've never been up there. The closest I've been is Connecticut, I think. So you are I say you guys a lot, but it's the New Englanders that I just I love reading stuff from New England horror writers because you guys are just surrounded by history and really creepy history. And it's still like untold lands and things like you mentioned there are forests that still people haven't gone through all of it and such. So is that a great, I mean, I noticed that there's a lot of writing up there in the towns and stuff. It just growing up with that, and having that completely surround you, is it a a different kind of, I guess you can't really compare it if you're only from there, but is it something that's a constant as you're growing up, just having kind of all these haunted things going around and just knowing about it?
Um, yes and no. I mean, for me, like I was kind of cursed because I was an only child. I was in a fairly remote area. And my mother was a librarian. So whenever I was like, Mom, I'm bored, I didn't have siblings to like, play with or fight with or whatever. So she was always just like, read a book. So I devoured books, and you see how that turned out. But I think there's a couple things. I mean, we do, have this history, kind of like these old ruins and farmhouses and brick buildings, and there's just like a sense of the past. And any typical New England downtown, it's going to have that feeling of being a couple hundred years old. There's that, and then there's also these like long cold winters, which I think like sort of just foster this love of reading. So I think that that's kind of sunk in because, like, yeah, I mean, you can go skiing or whatever, but I mean, for a lot of people, it's just sit by the fire and read a book. So I think there's like an appreciation for reading here that I didn't see so much in the South. I lived in Florida for 20 years, and I mean, obviously, people read in Florida, but I didn't feel there. It just felt overshadowed by a lot of the outdoor stuff that you can do year round down there. Whereas up here, if it's 2 degrees outside and it's sleeting and freezing, and especially in the days before telephones and computers, like it's just a very natural inclination to pick up a book and grab a cup of coffee and just kind of settle in. So I think that's part of it too. Like there's just kind of a history of a love of books, and all of these like really cute little town libraries that we have around here too. I spent a lot of time in libraries growing up. And it was, kind of one of my favorite places. And I'm really lucky that I was able to do that.
Oh, that would have been awesome having a mom who's a librarian. I my great aunt was one, so at our local library, so I would see her when I'd go in, but I'm with you. I love to spend hours just sitting in there and reading. And we had one in the nearby town that had a fountain in it with a bunch of like kids playing like statues of them and colored
Mm.
lights and water that would flow out. And it was always nice to grab a book and settle in near the fountain and have like the patter of water behind you while you're reading a book and little lights changing and stuff. And you also have a rich history up there of a lot of great writers came from New England. There's as far as horror authors in particular, Poe and Lovecraft and many others that were up there. So I, I guess it's kind of taboo at sometimes, but I think we've gotten over it now to mention Lovecraft as so I know I felt like there was a bit of the maybe not Lovecraftian, but the weird influence coming in on the story with it was Marrow.
Oh,
I
of Marrow and Abomination.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, that was. Trying to think what I wrote that for originally. Remember? Yeah, I go through different periods where like different periods and different things interest me, and at the time I was very interested in the number station, some Cold War spy stuff. But yeah, there is definitely a little bit of a cosmic, I think, kind of feel to that. So yeah, I guess Lovecraft is kind of in the mix of influences, but I mean, I'm not a huge Lovecraft fan. I've got his Treasury, like the big one, and I've read it through a couple of times, but it's it's kind of like one of thousands of books that I've read. But I did like some of the way he had a way of describing things and making them seem so eerie and creepy and like so I like that element of his work, like what he did with like the cosmos and the old ones and stuff like that.
Who would you say were your bigger inspirations when it comes to what
Um,
helped you develop as a writer
well,
or as a
actually, a
reader?
lot early on. It was a lot of fantasy. I actually wrote fantasy before I got dark, before my taste got darker. So I would say the early ones were like C.J. Sherry, Tanith Lee, Gene Wolfe was a big one. David Eddings, the Dragonlance books. George Martin, but he came later. Um, Stuff like that. Robert Howard. Um, and then later on, I got into horror, and it's kind of just like pretty much everything and anything. Like Anne Rice was another one I really, really liked. Um, yeah, just there's so many.
Just
King, of course, to some extent, you know.
yeah. She, Anne Rice really delivers a lot of, I'll call it flavor with how she
Mhm.
writes. I think like the first time I visited New Orleans, I could like walk around and know where I was almost in my head. I'd
Yeah.
build a map from all the different stories she'd told at different times that were set there. And so when I got dropped down in the Garden District and then in the French Quarter, it was just kind of like, oh no, we just walk over here and then we can see that. And then, we go over here and we can see that. And it's like, how do you know this? Because I read a lot of Anne Rice for a while.
I'm actually going next month for the first time. I'm like so excited about it because I've always wanted to go.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna have so much fun. I do not wear open-toed shoes
Okay.
because it they're okay. If you're in the French Quarter, there's so many tourists, it gets sticky and you can take home things that you didn't take with you that like illnesses and fungus and stuff from walking down the streets if you get it actually on your skin.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Also line the toilet if you're going to sit on it, if you're in any public restroom whatsoever, because they have a ridiculous rate of STDs down there.
And
Which, yeah, these are the gross things. Once again, this is some of the 18 plus coverage. But and if you're going through down in the French Quarter, Bourbon Street is no longer really a good spot to go through. It's just become tourist trap central. There's like just t-shirt shop after t-shirt shop, then bar. A lot of people standing on like girls wearing far too few clothes, selling like shots and things, and people are just walking around getting drunk and throwing up. But if you move one street over, you can, I think it's Royale Street. That one's fine. And there's a couple of shops that I highly recommend you go to. The number one is either Reverend Zombies or Marie Laveau's Voodoo Shops down in the French Quarter. They're like sister stores.
Okay.
And there's some great like haunted history tours and stuff you can take. Um, and those are really fun. And Lafitte's is an old blacksmith shop that is turned into a tavern, and they have the like original. Um, there's like a fireplace in the center that's open, and a lot of people who've gone through there have gotten pictures taking through there. That was where they would kill the traitors,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, and and people have taken pictures and they've seen entities around that show up in their pictures at Lafitte's, particularly in the fireplace. So that's super fun. Um, and then after you get through the French Quarter, if you want to have some good music and stuff at night, go up to French Men's District. And there's some great, just like out of the way little pubs and stuff that have amazing singers because it's just full of, New Orleans is just full of, we saw, uh, oh, Erin Neville's aunt. I can't remember her name, but we just went up and it was a place called Snug Harbor and just found a little out of the way place. And she was sitting there and she was singing. And then like people would just walk in off the street and it was like, oh, a famous musician comes in, hops up on the stage, joins her for a song or two, leaves. Her nephews come in. And so it's like we get a Neville family concert and then they just take off. And it was just a really cool place. Uh,
Awesome. Thank you.
yeah, I love New Orleans. We try to go every year when we can. And when I first went there, though, I was like, I didn't understand the open-toed shoe thing until I was there, and it was like, oh yes, you will stick to the pavement.
Yep. Good to know.
And
Thank you.
yeah, and the streets in if you're gonna do in the French Quarter, um, they are the sidewalks are all like kind of cobblestone, so they're uneven. So that's another reason why you want to wear a pretty sturdy shoe, like a tennis shoe,
Okay.
instead of heels, because otherwise you're going to be kind of wobbly as you go.
Yeah, I'm 50. My days of running around in heels are over.
I'm sandals or boots, and now I finally have accepted that I can wear tennies because I'm old enough that I can get away with it and just be like, shut up, I'm old, my hip hurts, my knees hurt. These are softer to walk around in.
I love boots actually, but don't work so well in summer. But
Well, that yeah, and don't go down there during summer because it is like the humidity.
oh yeah,
Although up in are you guys as humid in Maine as it is in like Pennsylvania and Connecticut, where it's just like boom.
no,
Like,
no, not usually. I mean, we might have like a week out of the year or 2 weeks where it's really humid, but for the most part, no. But I did live in Florida for 20 years, so I know humidity. Not my friend at all.
yeah, I saw your hair. You have got you got much curlier hair than I do, and mine is hard to deal with. Usually it's in curls now. It's all brushed out just because winter and stuff. But yeah, I can imagine how hard it has to be for you to be down there too, because
My hair is much happier in New England, definitely.
you have gorgeous hair.
Thank you.
So we were talking about different influences and stuff, and you just brought up session 9. Uh, with have you ever visited Danvers at all?
No,
The
and I'm
Danvers?
so I'm so bummed because it turned out that one of my cousins is actually a city manager. And I don't know, like I could be wrong, but I think that I probably could have gotten permission to go to the site, maybe if I tried to pull that string. But now it's condos, so I mean you could now, but it's not going to be like it was in session 9. But I'm not that far from that, but yeah, I actually have somewhere I have an art book that was done by the patients of Danvers, and even that has that creepy vibe. Like it's and like there's little tidbits of their stories and stuff, and like there's I might grab it, but I don't know what shelf it's on. So yeah, but I've watched that movie. It never loses power. I've watched it probably 20 times, and it's still just you feel the atmosphere of the place through the movie, like you really do. It's crazy.
I I was so bummed once. I was watching it one time and they cut off the last 5 minutes of it from the streaming service I was watching. And I was like, but That's
Why?
that's like I don't know. They just like it was just one of those things where it I might have been pirating a stream, or watching a
Oh,
free stream on a site that wasn't supposed to be free, I'm not admitting to anything there, but they apparently just didn't include the last 5 minutes, so then I had to go and like, but I need the last 5 minutes because you need to hear Simon,
yeah. I
you
live in
can't.
the weak and the wounded. I have an obsession with haunted asylums. So I do have, I told you I wanted to do all the horror tropes. I definitely have a haunted asylum story in me at some point. um, but yeah, that's I can't remember. I think I have it on DVD and VHS. But one of them has like a little behind the scenes kind of snippet thing on it. And they were talking about just different things and like just the atmosphere of the building and how it really like took over in a lot of elements. Like that cover, which is just that wheelchair in a hall, like they didn't stage that. They just turned a corner, it was there, and somebody went and there's your cover. And it's so perfectly creepy. Like it just, yeah.
It wouldn't have surprised me if like half of that movie was just they found it that way. Yeah, I think a
I
lot of
know,
it,
right? Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
did, where they have the condos now, did they dig up the graves, or is that on a separate site? Or I've read,
I
but I
haven't
haven't.
I don't know. I still haven't been to the building and I still do want to go. Ooh, I should look and see if they have like Airbnbs out of there. Like that would kind of be cool. But I think what they did was they took down, I could be wrong about this. I think they took down like the wings, like the bat wings, and left the middle section. I don't know anything about what was done on the grounds. I would hope that they did something. But there's an asylum where I live that's kind of a similar story. It's actually still, parts of it are still open. But again, there's like so many unmarked graves, like they don't even know. It's so sad. It's crazy.
Yeah, I I go to Terrificon. It's the first con I ever went to, and it was 2 years ago. I'm 49 years old, and I didn't go to a Comic Con until I was 47. So I'm just like, oh my God. But I stayed in this place in Connecticut, and when I told Leo from the Door King, I'm like, oh, we're staying at this hotel. He was like, that one's haunted, and I'm like, what? And he's like, they built it on a grave, on a like cemetery, and they dug up some of the graves, but not all of them, and the rest of the cemetery is still there. Like you look out the window and you're looking at graves. You park your car in the back and you're like 10 feet from a gravestone.
Yeah, there's a cemetery. There's a cute little coastal town near me named Booth Bay, and on the way there, you drive through like the road literally goes right through the cemetery. And every time I go over there, I'm like, yeah, there's no way they got all the graves. Like, there's definitely like they're just, I don't know, it's kind of crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, just like, oh, I'll just be here. I'll just be here under the
Yeah,
road. Hi. Stop shaking the dirt down, man.
right. Just trying to get some rest.
Jeez. Which goes then into back to the one of your other stories. I think this is the one with everyone dying from the White Plague, with tuberculosis, where you have that was
That
very
was the Strigoi one.
yeah, and I hadn't I'd never heard of it being anything tied with it was tuberculosis, right? Was the
I
White
believe,
Plague?
I believe so. Um, Now I'm trying to remember from the research. I know that that was kind of loosely based on some true stories about New England's vampires. Um, I want to say it was consumption, but I don't know what consumption actually is. Maybe it was tuberculosis. I don't know. I don't remember. The research I do doesn't always stay in my head, like once the story is done. So I would probably have to look that up again.
It is tuberculosis.
Okay.
Look, apparently because it makes the people pale
Yeah.
when they get it. But I was fascinated by that story. Just like all
Thank
of
you.
the way the family elements worked and stuff, because that was something like, now if we have split families, people don't really like, oh, you're not mine, or they don't
Right.
always embrace everybody together. But back in the day, it was just like, oh, got a new family, we're just going to keep adding on, and you're your sister now, or you're her sister now, and
Yeah.
you become close.
Yeah, that was another one where there was quite a bit of research done, because I remember now putting in the yellow days, which was something that actually happened. Like everything turned red. I turned yellow, like there was a yellow mist. And the stuff with Katahdin Iron Works, which was this iron city that kind of came up and like boomed and disappeared up here. It was a really big deal for a while, and it's closed now. But like I did go up there, and you can actually still go to part of the site. And one of the things they have there is this huge like iron. It wasn't a fireplace. Like what's the word for biggest, like furnace kind of thing? You can actually walk into it, and it's like just this crazy structure. I have a picture of it on my Insta. But it's wild. It's like you have to go down this like 10-mile like dirt road to get there. And it's like middle of nowhere. Like just kind of a crazy like, but yeah, once there was like this little city with everything in there, and then it just, dried up and vanished. So the woods took it back for the most part, but the stove, I guess, is still there. Kiln, I think that's what it was, like a giant iron kiln or something.
That's so cool.
Mm.
We don't have those things in Nebraska. I mean, we have towns that have failed, but the corn takes them back, not the trees.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to go back to movies, because you had mentioned, like again, Session and I, we were both into that. Uh, what are your favorite types of? Are you a big horror movie fan, or
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
what are some of your favorite horror movies?
I would have to say As Above, So Below is pretty much at the top of the list. Have you seen that one?
I don't think I have.
It's
I
a found footage, and it's in Paris in the catacombs. So it hits like the trifecta for me. I love catacombs. I love mazes. I love and then it has a lot layered in with Dante's The Inferno. So like I've seen, that's another one I've probably seen 20 times, and it like terrifies me every time. Hellraiser 1 and 2 would be up there. Suspiria, Blair Witch. Um, there's so many. I love Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. Trying to think what, like, recently one that I really liked, The Substance, I thought was really good. Heretic, I thought was really good.
I loved Heretic. I
Hmm.
haven't seen Substance yet, though, but
It was good. It was good. It was kind of a fresh take on things, I thought. Yellow Brick Road is another one I love. That was set in New Hampshire. And there's so many. I do like a lot of found footage if they're done right. Ghoul is one that was actually filmed in, I believe, Ukraine. I think that was pretty effective. Blair Witch, love it or hate it, but I actually do love the Blair Witch, the first one, even the sequel, I will say. Yeah, I'm blanking out. As soon as we hang up, I'll think of like 20 others, but those are a couple of my faves. Oh, Day of the Dead. Out of zombie movies, like Day of the Dead is my absolute favorite.
I can't watch a lot of the found footage ones because I'm epileptic, and the
Oh, the
bouncy
shit.
cameras,
Yeah.
yeah, messes me up. But yeah, I'm with you on a lot of those. Hellraisers were great. Dracula was great. Um, I loved all of that. I just love the haunted houses too. So like Rose Red to me, and
Yeah.
House on Haunted Hill, The Haunting. I just all of those. And then we watched when I was in high school, we had an English teacher who had us watch all of the old Vincent Price ones. The
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah,
Yeah, those are awesome.
I there are people that I can freak out, and you're just like, Nicholas, and
Yeah, right.
get that kind of shiver going up your back. Because I mean, with what little they had to use for things back then, they were able to. Vincent Price himself just made everything better somehow,
Oh yeah, definitely.
and
Yeah.
things like like the door shutting and then the eyes staring out at you from the Iron Maiden, and little things like that were just like so much better than what probably today they would try to do some super, like
Right. Exactly. Yeah, just keep it
CGI
simple,
thing.
keep it effective.
All right. Well, I have kept you here for an hour, and wanted to know if you had any conventions or anything coming up that you're planning to do.
For conventions, I will be at StokerCon, which is in Connecticut in June. I'm also going to Nikon, which I go to every year. That is in New Hampshire now. It's moved a couple times, but the new home is in New Hampshire, and I cannot say enough for any horror, literary, arty types in the area. Or even not in the area. It's definitely worth coming out to. And then not really a convention, but in fall there is Merrimack Book Fair, which takes place in Haverhill, Massachusetts. Um, Sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, I think I froze.
Oh, you're
All right,
fine.
there. Trying to think what else. I don't know. I would love to go to World Fantasy Con, but probably not in the budget for this coming year. So I think that, as far as I know, is it. Are you going to either of those, or?
No, here in Nebraska, I'm going I'm doing comic cons. I don't have any horror cons that I'm going to right now. So I'm hitting Kansas City actually this upcoming weekend, and then there's one in Nebraska in a smaller town area, but it's getting some good guests in it at the end of the month. And then I'm going to be hitting Terrificon in Connecticut in the beginning of August, which is great place to be. It's a really fun con if you get a chance to, if you're into the comics side of things. Which
Um, Kind of getting there, I guess. When Still Folk comes out, probably we'll be doing some of those for that. Um, yeah, and there's some little ones I might hit around New Hampshire and Maine. Have to kind of see. But yeah, for this year, the only ones I'm sure of are StokerCon and Econ.
okay. And where do you like people to interact with you when they reach out on social media?
Um, Probably the easiest, really. You can either go to my Facebook or my website, which is morgansylvia.net. Do I have time to tout something else I have coming up?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm pretty excited about this, but my novella Carrion Harvest is being adapted by Realm into a audio drama. That is part of a series of novellas that Fred Greenhow, who is the mastermind behind Realm's um, audio division, or Realm is all audio, but I've worked with him a couple times. He's the head honcho behind Undertow, and he is yeah, he's done Carrion Harvest, and it's part of a series called Trio of Nightmares. I don't have a release date, but I believe that is coming out pretty soon, and I'm super stoked for it.
Awesome. Let me know and we'll make sure that we promote it for you.
Awesome, thank you.
And I would normally be like, I forgot to ask you beforehand if you would like to do a reading, be more than happy to let you do one. I can run an ad break real quick if you need to find something, but I don't want to put you on the spot because I just realized I was like, oh, and that part I forgot to mention when I
It's
was
okay.
writing to you.
I'd be happy to come back and do one a different time.
Okay.
Okay.
I would love
Yeah, I
to do
didn't have
that.
anything planned, so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm just kind of like, oh, wait. Yeah, I forgot to ask her about that. I've been really caught up with things lately. between doing a couple different shows, and I just had some health issues and stuff going on. So I'm a little bit more scattered than I normally am. But
Yeah.
um, so where was it on social media? That is
Oh,
it?
my website is morgansylvia.net. I had morgansylvia.com, and I forgot to renew one time, and somebody stole it out from under me. And for a while it got like just spammed with stuff, and now like the domain is expired, so I'm trying to get it back. But in the meantime, I'm at morgansylvia.net. So, and
Okay.
there's links to all my other socials there. Or you can just Google Morgan Sylvia writer. I'll come up.
Yes, you will.
Yeah.
With your beautiful hair.
Or just try summoning me. Like one or the other.
Put out a circle. Get some
Yeah.
talk. Get some ruins. I'm assuming. I think there would have to be pine cones, a kitty cat. Um, you said you like fish,
Coffee.
coffee.
Yeah. Slayer CD.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I took my nephew to the last Slayer tour, and now they're touring again. So I'm like,
Oh, I didn't see that. That's cool. I've seen them
yeah,
like I don't even know how many times, but I would definitely go check that out.
there was fire. I was like, this is the first
Oh
concert
yeah.
I've been through that there was fire at. That
Yeah,
was
the last
pretty.
time I saw them, there was fire, and I was like in the back, and I could still feel the heat. Like,
Yeah, we were in the waybacks, but it was like, I'm taking you here because you were going to love this, and it was like Primus was there, and it was a gorgeous, gorgeous thing. It's hard for me to do the concerts with the epilepsy too, but I like
mm,
just cover my eyes during things and take it off, but awesome concerts. So, okay, I'm going to let us go, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. And everybody go out, check out these books. We've got Dawn, book one of the Aris Trilogy, because the second one is going to be released very soon. Read Abode. It was going to terrify you. And get ready to be pre-ordering The Withering Hours. And so many other things that you'll find on her site, because it's just it's just beautiful writing. And if you want your pants scared off, grab a Abode and make sure that you have a teddy bear or a kitty cat or something to snuggle up next to you, or that you're reading it during the day, because it scared me and I don't scare. So it's got this gal's seal of approval. But thank you again for coming on, and thank you, Bork, for jumping in here and there and saying
I know,
hi.
right? She's sulking on the corner of the desk now. Thank you so
Aw.
much for having me. It flew by. It really did.
Yeah,
It feel like an hour.
we'll have to have you again. We'll check up when you get the latest stuff released and talk about that when it comes out.
Sounds good. And hopefully
Awesome.
by then I'll remember the rest of the movies that I like. That'd be fun too. The
We'll
ones
make
I
we'll
didn't
make
know
some list.
today.
All right. Well, thank you everybody, and have a good night.